Mom, where's my living expenses? I asked as the train prepared to depart. My mother reached into her jacket and pulled out a thick stack of scratch-off lottery tickets, pressing them firmly into my hands. This semester's living expenses are all here, she said, her voice cold as winter steel. Whether you eat well or go hungry depends entirely on your luck. Her eyes were ice cold, without a trace of humor or warmth. The passengers around us stared at me as if I were some sort of elaborate joke unfolding before their eyes. Their expressions ranged from bewildered amusement to outright pity. I clutched the colorful stack of papers in my trembling hands, feeling the blood drain from my face and my limbs grow numb with shock. But my mother had no idea that I harbored a secret that would change everything. I could see floating above each scratch-off ticket a line of small golden text that no one else could perceive. Jessica, what on earth does your mom mean by this? She's got to be joking with you, right? My boyfriend Brandon frowned deeply, looking at the stack of lottery tickets in my arms with undisguised revulsion, as if they were something contaminated and foul. I shook my head slowly, my throat constricting so tightly that I could not utter a single word. The expression in my mother's eyes was all too familiar to me. It was the same look she wore whenever she had made an irrevocable decision, a look that brooked no argument or negotiation. She was absolutely serious about this. She genuinely intended to provide for my next 6 months of college life with this stack of lottery tickets, whose authenticity I could not even verify. Mrs. Rivers is really something else. How could she joke about something like this? Brandon's voice carried a mixture of impatience and barely concealed disdain. There must be several hundred tickets here. I wonder if someone swindled her into buying all these worthless papers. Brandon came from a privileged background where money was never a concern. On the first day of school, his parents had deposited a 6-figure sum into his account for living expenses. He could neither understand nor empathize with the humiliating predicament I now found myself in. The train slowly began to move, and my mother's figure on the platform grew smaller and smaller in the distance. Throughout our departure, she never once turned back to look at me, not even for a final farewell glance. My heart grew colder with each passing moment, matching the rhythm of the scenery rushing past the train window. Why would she do this to me, even if our family's financial situation had deteriorated significantly? Surely, it had not reached the point where she would need to humiliate me in such a public and degrading manner. The stares from fellow passengers felt like needles piercing my skin. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with curiosity, but most seemed to regard me as entertainment, their faces showing barely suppressed laughter. I could hear the whispered conversation between 2 middle-aged women sitting nearby. These modern parents have such nerve, giving their child a pile of lottery tickets as living expenses. Is this girl even her biological daughter? Look at that poor girl. She's about to cry. What a terrible situation to put a child in. I buried my face deeper into the stack of scratch-off tickets, trying desperately to block out the world around me. The cold paper pressed against my cheek, and I could smell the cheap ink used in their printing. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me completely, a faint glimmer of golden light suddenly flashed before my eyes. I froze, completely stunned by what I was seeing. I blinked several times, thinking that my tears were causing some sort of optical illusion. But when I focused my gaze on the lottery tickets in my lap once more, that strange phenomenon appeared again, clearer than before. On the topmost scratch-off ticket, one labeled Lucky Fortune, there was a line of extremely fine golden text floating above the surface. Scratch the lower right corner, amount $10. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might burst from my chest. What was this strange vision? Was I losing my mind? I stared intensely at that line of text, and it remained there like a system prompt in a video game, clearly suspended above the ticket's coding. "What are you staring at? You startled me," Brandon said irritably, disturbed by my sudden movement. "Nothing. It's nothing," I replied hastily, turning away and rubbing my eyes vigorously with the back of my hand. When I looked again, the golden text was still there, as clear as ever. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. This secret ability of mine was something I had never shared with anyone. From a very young age, I had occasionally been able to see strange things that others could not. For instance, before exams, I might see the word essential floating above certain questions. Or before leaving the house, I might see rain in 30 minutes drift across the sky. But this ability had always been unreliable and sporadic, appearing and disappearing without warning, which led me to dismiss it as mere wishful thinking or imagination. Today, however, it was manifesting with unprecedented clarity. I gripped the top scratch-off ticket so tightly that my nails nearly punctured the paper. Could it be possible that... A wild, almost impossible thought began to form in my mind. "Jessica, what exactly do you plan to do when we get to school? You can't seriously expect to survive by scratching these things, can you?" Brandon's voice pulled me back to reality, his tone carrying a note of interrogation. "Don't expect me to support you. The money my parents gave me is for my own use. I have no obligation to take care of you financially." His words were blunt and hurtful, like a knife blade finding its mark with surgical precision. I looked at his handsome but cold profile, and the last vestiges of warmth I felt for him evaporated completely. "Don't worry," I said slowly, emphasizing each word. "I won't spend a single penny of your money." With that declaration, I turned away from him and focused all my attention on the stack of lottery tickets in my possession. I began flipping through them one by one, my excitement growing with each golden message that appeared. Scratch the upper left corner, amount $50. Thank you for playing. Thank you for playing. Scratch the center, amount $100. Line after line of golden text flashed before my eyes like a magnificent meteor shower that only I could witness. In the depths of my despair, a small but fierce spark of hope began to kindle. Perhaps what my mother had given me was not a stack of worthless paper after all. Perhaps it was something far more valuable, a chance to gamble with fate itself, a game that only I could win. When we arrived at school, Brandon made an excuse about meeting friends and abandoned me at the dormitory entrance with my heavy luggage. I struggled up 6 flights of stairs alone, searching for my assigned room. When I pushed open the door, 2 girls were already there. One was impeccably dressed in designer clothing, sitting at a desk touching up her makeup. Her name was Madison, and she had been the most active participant in our dormitory group chat before school started. According to rumors, her family owned a successful company. The other girl appeared more modest and studious. She was making her bed when I entered and smiled warmly at me. "Hello, I'm Emily." I nodded in acknowledgement and began quietly organizing my belongings. "Wow, you bought so many scratch-off tickets!" Madison's sharp eyes immediately spotted my stack of living expenses on the desk, and she exclaimed dramatically, "Are you planning to set up a booth outside the dorm to sell them?" Her voice was perfectly calibrated to ensure that everyone in the room could hear her comment clearly. Emily also looked over with curiosity, her expression showing a mixture of interest and confusion. My face burned with embarrassment, and I wished desperately that the floor would open up and swallow me whole. My mom bought them for entertainment," I mumbled vaguely. "Mrs. Rivers certainly has an interesting sense of humor," Madison said with a sneer, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But those things are completely unreliable. I'd advise you to be more practical." Oh, by the way, student council officers will be coming to inspect the dormitories later. You'd better put away these treasures of yours so they don't mistake our room for some kind of gambling den. With that cutting remark, she returned to arranging her expensive cosmetics, dismissing me entirely. I clenched my fists tightly and shoved the stack of scratch-off tickets deep into the darkest corner of my storage cabinet. Humiliation and anger wrapped around my heart like strangling vines. That evening, while my roommates went out for dinner together, I remained alone in the dormitory. I had not eaten anything all day, and my stomach burned with hunger. I checked my pocket and found only the 20-something dollars I had brought from home. That small amount would not even cover the cost of basic toiletries, let alone food for any substantial period. In the darkness, I opened my cabinet and retrieved the stack of scratch-off tickets once more. I needed to verify what I had seen. I absolutely had to confirm whether my incredible suspicion was actually true. I selected the lucky fortune ticket that bore the message, "Scratch the lower right corner, amount $10, and using my fingernail, I carefully and methodically scratched away the coating in the designated area. 2 clear letters appeared before my eyes. 10. $10. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to prove that I was not hallucinating. I stared at those 2 letters with an intensity that made my heart feel as though it were being squeezed by an invisible fist, then suddenly released. A mixture of overwhelming joy and lingering fear washed over me, nearly causing me to collapse from the emotional impact. It was real. My ability to see the winning information was absolutely real. I rushed out of the dormitory and ran to the convenience store downstairs, where I used the $10 to buy a cup of instant noodles and a bottle of soda. When I poured the boiling water over the noodles and inhaled that long-missed aroma, tears began flowing down my cheeks in streams I could no longer control. These were not tears of self-pity or sorrow, but tears of relief and gratitude for this unexpected salvation. I would not have to go hungry tonight, at least not today. After finishing my meal, I returned to the dormitory and locked myself inside. I spread the entire stack of scratch-off tickets across my bed like a devoted pilgrim and began examining them one by one with reverent attention. This was an enormous undertaking. The stack contained at least 500 or 600 tickets, with face values ranging from $5 to $50. Thank you for playing. Thank you for playing. Scratch the center area, amount $200. Thank you for playing. Scratch above the barcode, amount $5. I separated all the tickets showing "Thank you for playing" and placed them in one pile, while carefully organizing those with winning amounts by value in ascending order. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from pure exhilaration. What had my mother been thinking when she gave me these tickets? Had she somehow known what they contained, or was this simply an extraordinary coincidence? After more than 2 hours of meticulous sorting, the results lay spread before me. Of the 500-plus scratch-off tickets, approximately 400 showed "Thank you for playing." The remaining winning tickets had amounts ranging from $5 to $500. I calculated roughly that if I cashed in all the winning tickets, the total would amount to approximately $15,000. $15,000. This sum would not only cover my tuition fees, but would leave me with substantial living expenses as well. I sank onto my bed, looking at the small pile of winning tickets I had identified, and began to laugh. It started as quiet chuckling, but gradually grew into uncontrollable laughter. Madison and Emily thought my mother had given me a pile of worthless paper. Brandon assumed I would come crawling to him for financial help. They were all completely wrong. What my mother had given me was a treasure trove beyond their wildest imagination. The next morning, I took several small winning scratch-off tickets and went to a convenience store near campus. "I'd like to cash these in," I said, handing the scratch tickets to the cashier. The store owner, a middle-aged man, accepted the tickets without looking up and scanned them with his machine. $120, he said, counting out the money from the register with the practiced indifference of someone accustomed to such transactions. I clutched the crisp bills as I left the store, feeling the warmth of sunlight on my face. For the first time, college life did not seem quite so intimidating. I first paid my semester fees and then went to the cafeteria for a proper meal. Watching the balance remaining on my student card, I felt a security I had never experienced before. Since I had no afternoon classes, I returned to the dormitory to find Madison engaged in a video call, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, Mom, don't worry about me. I'm doing fine here. My roommates? Well, they're okay, I suppose. Although one of them is pretty strange. Her mother sent her a huge pile of scratch-off tickets as living expenses. Can you believe how ridiculous that is? Last night, she was alone in the dorm room, and I have no idea what she was doing, but she was crying and laughing like some kind of maniac." I stopped dead in my tracks at the doorway. Inside the room, Emily and our other roommate Lisa kept their heads down, pretending not to listen, but their barely suppressed smiles betrayed their amusement. When Madison noticed me, instead of moderating her tone, she deliberately spoke even louder. Yes, that's the one named Jessica I was telling you about. She looks pretty pathetic. I honestly don't know how she managed to get into our school." In that moment, all rational thought was consumed by blazing anger. I stormed into the room, snatched her phone away, and shouted at the elegantly made-up woman on the screen. "Hello there, I'm that pathetic Jessica your daughter was just talking about. Perhaps you could teach your daughter some basic manners and tell her to stop gossiping about other people's private family matters." Before anyone could react, I hung up the video call. The entire dormitory fell into deathly silence. Madison stared at me in shock for a full 3 seconds before finding her voice and shrieking, "Jessica, have you lost your mind? How dare you hang up on my mother?" I stepped aside to avoid her lunge and looked at her with ice-cold composure. "I was simply teaching you the meaning of respect." "Respect? A penniless girl who survives on lottery tickets wants to talk to me about respect?" Madison's face contorted with rage. "Do you have any idea what I could do to you? I could make your life at this school absolutely miserable with just one phone call." "I believe you," I replied, my voice eerily calm. "But do you believe that I could make you cry right now?" Madison looked at me as if I had told the most ridiculous joke she had ever heard. "You? What could you possibly do to me?" Without saying another word, I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Madison's conversation with her mother filled the room with crystal clarity. "There's one who's really strange. Her mother sent her a huge pile of scratch-off tickets as living expenses. Can you believe how ridiculous that is? She looks pretty pathetic. I honestly don't know how she managed to get into our school." Madison's face drained of all color. You were recording us?" she stammered, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "Just taking precautions," I said coolly, turning off the recording. "I don't care what people think about me personally, but if you ever speak about me that way again, I cannot guarantee that this recording won't find its way onto the school forum." Madison's lips trembled as she struggled to find words, but nothing came out. Her family valued their reputation above all else, and if this recording became public, she would become the laughingstock of the entire campus. "You just wait," she finally managed to say, before grabbing her bag and storming out of the room. Silence returned to the dormitory. I ignored the complex looks from Emily and Lisa and returned to my desk where my treasure trove awaited. I needed more money. Much more money. not just for survival, but for dignity and independence. I selected the ticket marked, "Scratch the center area, amount $200, and carefully revealed the hidden message with a coin. 200 appeared beneath the coating. Looking at those words, I felt no wild joy as I had the first time, only a cold, determined calm. This was still not enough, not nearly enough. I was going to make everyone who looked down on me eat their words. Just then, my phone rang. It was Brandon. I hesitated before answering. "Jessica, where are you right now?" His voice sounded somewhat urgent. "In my dorm room, what's the matter?" My tone was distinctly cold. Did you actually win money on those lottery tickets?" he asked directly. My heart sank. "Who told you that?" "Never mind who told me. Madison already filled me in on everything. You had a fight with her, and you threatened her too?" Brandon's voice was full of accusation. "Jessica, what's happened to you? Have you completely abandoned your self-respect for the sake of a little money?" I laughed bitterly. "Brandon, what gives you the right to lecture me? When I needed you most, how did you treat me? And now you come here to question my choices. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?" The phone line went silent. After a long pause, he softened his tone. "Jess, that's not what I meant. I'm just worried about you. Gambling on lottery tickets isn't a sustainable way to live." "How much did you win?" "Listen, why don't you give me that money for safekeeping and I'll lend you some proper living expenses instead? You should stop antagonizing Madison and the others, okay?" "Give it to you?" I caught the crucial implication in his words. "When have I ever spent your money?" "Well," Brandon seemed to stumble over his words. "Yesterday you said you wouldn't spend a penny of my money, so I thought you might want to pay me back for all those gifts I've bought you over the past year." I was completely stunned. Gifts? What gifts had he given me that would require repayment? In our year-long relationship, the most expensive thing he had ever given me was a stuffed animal worth about $100. Suddenly, I understood everything with perfect clarity. He was not calling out of concern for me. He was calling to ask for money. He thought I had won a significant amount and wanted his share of the windfall. A wave of nausea rose from my stomach. "Brandon," I said with icy finality, "we're breaking up." I hung up immediately and blocked all his contact information without waiting for his response. I gazed out the window as evening approached. This city was vast and unforgiving. The only things I could rely on were myself and that stack of colorful scratch-off tickets. Breaking up with Brandon brought me no sadness, only a profound sense of liberation. Over the next few days, I maintained an extremely low profile. I attended classes punctually and spent my free time either in the dormitory or at the library. Madison, apparently intimidated by my previous confrontation, still regarded me with hostile eyes but refrained from further provocation. An uneasy equilibrium settled over our dormitory. Meanwhile, I used every spare moment to execute my wealth acquisition plan. I did not cash in all my winning tickets at once, as that would have attracted unwanted attention. Instead, I scratched only a few tickets each day, limiting myself to a few $100s, and visited different convenience stores to claim my prizes. Store A for $100, Store B for $200, Store C for another $100. Little by little, the balance in my bank account grew in a steady and discreet manner. Half a month later, I had cashed in all the smaller prizes. The stack of tickets had diminished by about 2/3, while my account contained over $16,000. Even after paying tuition, this amount was more than sufficient to see me through an entire academic year comfortably. But I did not stop there. Among the remaining tickets, I had saved several trump cards. Scratch any 3 matching symbols, amount $1,000. Scratch the code area below, amount $5,000. And there was one $50 Golden Touch ticket bearing golden text that made my heart race every time I looked at it. Scratch the jackpot area, amount $250,000. $250,000. Just staring at those words made me hold my breath involuntarily. This was no longer just living expenses. This was a sum that could fundamentally transform my entire life. I hesitated to scratch it immediately. I had a strong intuition that this ticket would bring complications I was not prepared to handle. Since my living expenses were no longer a concern, I began contemplating another pressing matter. My mother. Why had she given me these lottery tickets? Where was she now? How was she managing? I tried calling her repeatedly, but her phone was always turned off. I contacted every relative I could think of, but they all claimed they had lost touch with her. The only information anyone had was that she had supposedly gone away to work somewhere distant. A growing sense of unease settled in my chest. On this particular day, as I sat in my dormitory studying the $250,000 ticket, Madison burst through the door with a malicious smile on her face. "Jessica, your ex-boyfriend is waiting downstairs, and he's driving a BMW. How impressive," she announced with obvious glee. I frowned. Brandon, what could he possibly want now? "Oh wait, my mistake," Madison said, feigning sudden realization. "He's not here for you. He's picking me up. We're going to a party tonight with some wealthy young socialites. People like you probably never get the chance to see how the other half lives, do you?" After applying fresh lipstick in the mirror, she sauntered out with obvious satisfaction. I walked to the window and indeed saw a shiny blue BMW parked below. Brandon leaned against the driver's door in designer clothes, chatting and laughing with Madison. Madison linked her arm through his intimately, and they got into the car together. Before driving away, Brandon seemed to sense my presence and looked up toward my dormitory window. Our eyes met, and his gaze was full of smug superiority. It was as if he were saying, "See, I'm better off without you. This is the life I deserve." I closed the curtains with an expressionless face. How childish and petty. Yet despite my dismissive thoughts, I felt an uncomfortable tightness in my chest. Not because of him, but because of the powerless feeling of being crushed by money and social status. I looked down at the scratch-off ticket in my hands. Perhaps it was time to take the ultimate gamble. The next day, I put on my most ordinary t-shirt and jeans, tucked the $250,000 Golden Touch ticket, along with several thousand and $5,000 winners into my pocket, and took the subway to a large lottery center far from campus. I did not enter immediately, but spent considerable time observing the area and the people coming and going. The faces of visitors displayed mixtures of hope and disappointment, anticipation and despair. I needed a foolproof plan. Walking in with a single ticket worth $250,000 would be far too conspicuous and potentially dangerous. I entered the lottery center and browsed the sales area rather than heading directly to the redemption counter. "Young lady, what would you like to purchase? We just received a fresh shipment of Golden Touch tickets, and many people have been winning big prizes," a sales clerk enthusiastically recommended. An idea struck me and I asked, "If I scratch a big prize, like the jackpot, can I cash it immediately here?" "Prizes over $200,000 must be processed at the state lottery headquarters, where you'll need to register your identity and pay taxes. We can only handle prizes under $200,000 here," the clerk explained. This information actually reassured me. Processing through official channels would be safer, even if more complicated. The question remained, how could I discover this jackpot in a way that would appear completely natural? I studied the display case full of scratch-off tickets and began formulating an audacious plan. I spent $200 purchasing an unopened book of Golden Touch tickets containing 50 individual tickets. Then I found a corner seat and began scratching them one by one. My actions attracted some attention, but people frequently spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on lottery tickets here, so my behavior was not particularly unusual. My eyes never actually focused on the tickets I was scratching in my hands. All my attention was concentrated on the special ticket I had brought with me. Scratch the jackpot area, amount $250,000. That line of golden text gleamed like a beacon, guiding me forward. I scratched quickly, finishing the entire book of 50 tickets in under 30 minutes. As expected, most were losers with only a few small wins of several dozen dollars each. The small crowd that had gathered to watch gradually dispersed, their faces showing expressions of just as expected. Feigning disappointment, I returned to the counter and mixed my pre-selected $1,000 and $5,000 winners among a batch of newly purchased tickets. "I'll take 10 instant win and 5 lucky strike tickets," I told the clerk. Then I continued scratching. "I won $1,000, I exclaimed quietly, attracting attention from nearby customers. A middle-aged man scratching his own tickets looked over. "Nice going, young lady. You're on a lucky streak." I smiled shyly and continued. "Another win, $5,000 this time." I raised my voice slightly with believable excitement. Now the entire lottery center was focused on me. Holy cow, this girl is on fire today. Consecutive wins? Is this for real? Let's see what she's scratching. People crowded around me, commenting excitedly on my apparent good fortune. I felt their intense stares and nervous perspiration, but I maintained perfect composure, appearing exactly like an ordinary girl overwhelmed by sudden luck. The stage was perfectly set. Now it was time for the main event. I took a deep breath and slowly extracted from my pocket the ticket I had hidden deepest, the one bearing the golden message I alone could see. I mixed it casually among the pile of already scratched losers on the table, then acted surprised. Huh? How did I miss this one? Every eye in the place focused on that pristine, golden touch ticket. The atmosphere reached its crescendo. "Scratch it quick. Maybe the luck fairy is following you around today," the middle-aged man said, more excited than I appeared to be. I nodded and picked up my coin, slowly scratching toward the jackpot area that only I knew contained the ultimate prize. The first symbol was a golden coin. The second symbol was another golden coin. As I revealed the fifth golden coin, the crowd erupted in gasps of amazement. "She won! She won! Quick, check the prize amount below!" My hand trembling with perfectly feigned shock, I scratched away the coating covering the corresponding prize amount. A dollar sign, followed by a long string of numbers appeared. $250,000. The entire lottery center fell into stunned silence. Everyone stared at those digits, as if unable to believe their own eyes. Then the crowd absolutely exploded. "Oh my God, the jackpot! It's the jackpot!" $250,000. I can't believe it. This girl just struck it rich. I sat in the center of the chaos, clutching that thin piece of paper, feeling as though I were trapped in an incredible dream. I knew I would win, of course, but I had not anticipated that when the moment of victory actually arrived, the emotional impact would still leave me dizzy with disbelief. The lottery center manager rushed over immediately, taking the ticket from my hands and verifying it multiple times, his face flushed with excitement. "It's real, absolutely real. This is the jackpot," he shouted while pulling out his phone to take photos for social media promotion. Meanwhile, I quietly slipped the tickets that had actually won the $1,000 and $5,000 prizes back into my pocket. Today, I would only claim those small prizes of several dozen dollars. This $250,000 prop was my real objective. Under the manager's guidance, I completed the necessary paperwork. Since the prize exceeded $200,000, I would need to bring identification and the winning ticket to the state lottery headquarters the following Monday. I left the lottery center with the official verification document, walking through a gauntlet of envious stares. Rather than returning directly to school, I found a secluded spot to collect my thoughts. $250,000 minus 24% federal tax and 8% state tax would leave me with $170,000 after taxes. With this money, I could not only escape my financial difficulties permanently, but also pursue possibilities I had never dared imagine before, such as investigating my mother's whereabouts and circumstances. As I was planning my future, a cold voice with a somewhat familiar accent spoke behind me. "Young lady, quite a stroke of luck you had today." I froze completely and spun around. Behind me stood a tall, thin, middle-aged man wearing an ill-fitting jacket, his face bearing an unpleasant smile. His eyes were fixed directly on the lottery verification document in my hands. I recognized him. He was the man who had been standing beside me in the lottery center, watching me scratch tickets. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, alarm bells ringing in my mind as I casually slipped the document into my pocket while backing away and studying him warily. He had followed me out here. He definitely was not just a curious bystander. "Don't be so nervous," the man said, rubbing his hands together with an increasingly obsequious but predatory smile. "I saw everything that happened in there. Your luck today was absolutely incredible, winning one big prize after another like that." "It was just luck," I replied coldly, my feet ready to run at a moment's notice. "Just luck?" The man laughed, a sound like sandpaper scraping against metal. "I've been playing the lottery for over 10 years, and I've never seen anyone win the way you did. You knew exactly where to scratch on the first ticket, went straight to the right spot on the second one, too. Young lady, do you have some special method?" My heart sank into my stomach. I had been too careless, after all. I thought my performance was flawless, but I had not counted on being observed by an experienced lottery player who could spot the inconsistencies in my behavior. My ability was my greatest secret and could never be revealed to anyone. "I don't know what you're talking about," I denied firmly, turning to leave. "Hey, don't walk away." The man grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Let's have a conversation. If you really have this kind of ability, it would be selfish to keep all the wealth to yourself. Include me in your operation, and I promise to make it worth your while. We'll split it 80 to 20, with you taking the larger share. How does that sound?" "Let go of me." I struggled against his grip, but his hand was like an iron clamp. "Don't be ungrateful." His expression turned vicious instantly. "I'm telling you, I've been watching you for a while now. Can you tell which tickets will win? Tell me your method. Otherwise, you're not leaving this alley today." He revealed his true predatory nature. My heart raced with panic and fear. This was a deserted alley with virtually no foot traffic. Even if I screamed at the top of my lungs, no one might hear me. What could I do? At that critical moment, my gaze fell upon the cheap electronic watch on the man's wrist. "Battery dies in 5 seconds." A line of tiny golden text flashed briefly across the watch display. My mind raced at lightning speed. Okay, I'll tell you everything." I immediately feigned terror and stopped struggling. "Just let go of me first, and I'll explain." Seeing me apparently give in, the man's face showed triumphant satisfaction, and he loosened his grip slightly. This was my chance. I suddenly lifted my foot and kicked his shin with every ounce of strength I possessed. The man cried out in pain and instinctively doubled over. I broke free from his grasp and ran toward the mouth of the alley as fast as I could. "You little brat! How dare you trick me!" The man roared behind me in fury, immediately giving chase. I did not dare look back, running forward with everything I had. Wind roared in my ears, and my heart felt ready to explode from my chest. The man's footsteps grew closer and closer. I could almost feel his outstretched hand about to grab my clothing. Just then, several uniformed patrol officers suddenly rushed into the alley entrance. "Stop right there! What's going on here?" Seeing the police, the man's expression changed completely. Without hesitation, he turned and fled in the opposite direction. My legs gave out completely, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. I was saved. It turned out that my earlier shout had not been solely to deceive the man, but also to buy time. I had seen the message about his watch and gambled that help would arrive when he caught up to me. My gamble had paid off. The patrol officers quickly apprehended the fleeing man. I accompanied them to the police station to file a report, describing what had happened while omitting my supernatural ability and simply claiming it was an attempted robbery. With the alley's security camera footage as evidence, the case was quickly resolved. By the time I left the police station, it was already dark. I returned to campus, still shaken by the experience. Upon entering my dormitory, I found Madison and Emily both present, and the atmosphere seemed somewhat tense. "Jessica, you're finally back. We couldn't reach you on your phone all day," Emily said with apparent relief upon seeing me. "I was out taking care of some business," I replied vaguely, not wanting to elaborate. Madison glanced at me with an expression that seemed to contain words she was struggling not to say. Finally, she could not contain herself. "Did you really win $250,000? I was startled. "How do you know about that?" "The whole school knows by now." Madison's voice was tinged with envy. "The video of you winning at the lottery center has been posted all over the school forum. There are even screenshots from the store owner's social media. Look for yourself." She handed me her phone. On the screen was footage of me being surrounded by the crowd at the lottery center. The headline was sensationally written: "Our school's freshman strikes gold, wins $250,000 lottery jackpot." The comments section was in complete chaos. "Holy crap, what kind of divine luck is this?" "I know this girl, she's in our department, usually so quiet and unassuming. Who knew she was a hidden lucky charm?" $250,000. How many years would I have to work to earn that much? "Please date me, rich lady. I'm hungry for both food and affection." There were also some discordant voices. "This has to be fake, right? Some kind of publicity stunt?" "Something about this seems staged to me." "Stop being bitter, people upstairs. Is it so hard to admit when someone else succeeds?" But the most jarring comment, which had been upvoted considerably, came from an account named Brandon K. The things people will do for money these days. Disgusting." It was Brandon. I returned the phone to Madison without expression. "Jessica, did you really win?" Emily asked, still seeming unable to believe it. I nodded. "Yes." The dormitory fell silent once again. Madison looked at me with eyes full of jealousy and resentment. The family wealth she had always been so proud of suddenly seemed less impressive in the face of my unexpected good fortune. But I felt no joy whatsoever. Today's experience had been a stark warning. The innocent carry no crime, but wealth invites trouble. My ability was a double-edged sword. It could bring me prosperity, but it could also bring mortal danger. The man who had confronted me was only the beginning. The forum post about my winnings continued to gain traction, making me a campus celebrity overnight. Everywhere I went, people pointed and whispered. Some were envious, others resentful, and a few had clearly malicious intentions. I collected my prize money as planned. After taxes, $170,000 was deposited into my account. Looking at that long string of digits, I felt none of the excitement I had anticipated. My first priority was finding a rental apartment off campus and moving out of the dormitory. I needed a completely secure and private space. On moving day, Madison did not deliver her usual cutting remarks. Instead, she looked at me with complex emotions and said, "Jessica, be careful out there." I was somewhat surprised, but nodded in acknowledgement. The apartment I rented was a secure studio with excellent building security. The first thing I did was conduct a complete audit of all my remaining scratch-off tickets. Most contained only small prizes, but 3 tickets caught my special attention. These were not common lottery varieties found in stores. Their ticket designs appeared ancient and featured strange patterns. They were called Dragon Seeker, which was an unusual name for lottery tickets. The golden text floating above these 3 tickets was completely different from what I had seen before. The first ticket read, "Scratch southeast position, obtain clue 1. The second, scratch south position, obtain clue 2. The third, scratch northwest position, obtain. The rest was a blur of unreadable code. Southeast, south, northwest. These were directional references. Clues. What kind of clues? I suddenly remembered the cold, determined expression in my mother's eyes when she handed me that stack of lottery tickets. A wild theory began forming in my mind once again. Could all of this have been orchestrated by her from the beginning? Perhaps she was not humiliating me or acting out of spite. Perhaps she was using a method that only I could understand, invisible to others, to communicate some vital information. The more I considered this possibility, the faster my heart began beating. I carefully selected the first Dragon Seeker ticket and located the southeast position on its directional compass, gently scratching away the coating with my fingernail. Beneath the surface, instead of a monetary amount or symbol, 2 small words appeared. Old house, old house. Seeing those words, my mind went completely blank. Our family's old house had been demolished 10 years ago due to urban development. That area was now a bustling commercial district. Where could there possibly be an old house anymore? What could this mean? I immediately took the second Dragon Seeker ticket and scratched the south position without hesitation. This time, an address appeared. An address I had never seen before, located in the old downtown district of our city. Oak Street, number 37, mailbox. The clues seemed to end there. The third scratch-off ticket's text was garbled code, making it impossible for me to know which area to scratch. Old house, Oak Street, 37, mailbox. What connection could there be between these 2 clues? I forced myself to calm down and carefully recalled everything I could remember about the old house. The old house had belonged to my grandparents, a traditional single-story home with a small courtyard. I had spent most of my childhood there. After the demolition, our family received compensation money and a new apartment, which became our current residence. My memories of the old house were quite vague, but I clearly remembered that its street address had indeed been Oak Street, number 37. A mailbox? I suddenly remembered that there had been an old-fashioned metal mailbox embedded in the wall beside the front door of the old house. During demolition, everything had been moved out, but that mailbox, built into the wall, had been difficult to remove and might have been left behind. That wall was a load-bearing wall for the entire compound. To save time and effort, the demolition crew had not completely torn it down, but instead built the new department store's exterior wall directly over it. A bold hypothesis formed in my mind. That mailbox was still there. It was sealed inside the exterior wall of the department store. The clue my mother had left was inside that mailbox. This discovery made me tremble with excitement. I immediately researched the department store on Oak Street online. It had been built 8 years ago and remained in operation. I had to see it for myself. The next day, I disguised myself in unremarkable clothes with a hat and face mask, taking the subway to Oak Street. Using my childhood memories, I quickly located the department store built precisely where our old house had stood. I walked around the building's perimeter, carefully examining the exterior walls. They were covered in smooth granite panels, showing no visible signs of construction joints or seams. Where would the mailbox be located? I struggled to remember. The mailbox had been on the right side of the front door, approximately at adult height. I walked to what I remembered as the correct position and gently tapped the granite wall surface. Thud, thud. The sound was solid. I moved slightly to one side and continued tapping. Thud, hollow, hollow. The sound changed. This position produced a hollow echo when tapped. My heart pounded with excitement, but how could I retrieve it? I certainly could not demolish someone's wall in broad daylight. I circled the area several times in frustration, working up a sweat from anxiety. Then I noticed a small advertisement posted on the wall corner. Exterior wall renovation, advertising space for rent, contact 555-XXXX. My eyes lit up. This was my opportunity. I immediately called the number. A man answered, identifying himself as the building's property manager. I claimed to represent an advertising company interested in renting this wall space for signage, but explained that we needed to conduct structural assessment first to ensure safe installation of large advertising displays. Hearing about potential business, the manager became very enthusiastic and immediately agreed to the arrangement. We scheduled a meeting for the following evening after the mall closed, when I would bring my construction crew for the assessment. After hanging up, I quickly contacted a professional renovation crew. I told them I needed to precisely cut out a specific section of granite without damaging whatever was inside, and then perfectly restore the wall afterward. I offered them a price they could not refuse. The next evening at 10 o'clock, I arrived at the department store with 2 workers, meeting the waiting property manager. "This is the wall you want to examine. Take all the time you need," the manager said with an ingratiating smile, pointing to the wall. "Thank you so much. We just need to take some small samples for testing." "It won't take long," I replied, handing him a thick envelope. The manager weighed the envelope and his smile grew even brighter. "Excellent, excellent. No rush at all. Take your time." He tactfully withdrew to give us privacy. Under my direction, the 2 workers used professional cutting tools to carefully remove the section of granite that had sounded hollow. With a gentle buzzing sound, the stone was precisely extracted. The workers carefully lifted away the granite piece. Behind it, embedded in rough concrete, was a rust-stained green metal mailbox. There it was, I nearly cried out with excitement. One worker quickly chiseled away the concrete around the mailbox and extracted it completely intact. The mailbox was secured with an old-fashioned brass lock, its keyhole clogged with rust. "Boss, do you want us to open this for you?" the worker asked. "No, that won't be necessary," I shook my head, clutching the mailbox tightly. "Just restore the wall." I paid the final installment, and the workers quickly reinstalled the granite section so seamlessly that the repair was virtually invisible from the outside. I carried the heavy metal mailbox back to my studio apartment by taxi. After locking my door securely, I could no longer contain my excitement. Unable to find the key, I had no choice but to use a hammer to break the old brass lock through brute force. With a loud clang, the lock broke open. I opened the mailbox to find no letters inside, only a small box wrapped tightly in multiple plastic bags. With trembling hands, I unwrapped layer after layer of plastic. Inside was a small wooden jewelry box. Opening the box, resting on red velvet lining, was not gold or precious stones, but a digital voice recorder and a yellowed old photograph. The photograph showed my mother as a young woman, holding me as an infant, her face radiating pure happiness. Beside her stood an unfamiliar man, wearing a crisp police uniform, looking distinguished and handsome. He was gazing down tenderly at my mother, with eyes full of love. Who was this man? I had never seen him before, nor had my mother ever mentioned him. I picked up the voice recorder and pressed play. After some crackling static, a voice I recognized yet found strange began speaking. It was my mother's voice, but much younger and gentler than I remembered. Jessica, when you hear this recording, Mama may no longer be alive. Don't be afraid, and don't cry. Mama has left you enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. But obtaining it will be very dangerous. That's why Mama created these puzzles that only you, with your special gift, can solve. That stack of scratch-off tickets was Mama's first test for you, and also your startup capital. This photograph in the mailbox is your second clue. The man in this picture is your biological father. His name was Robert Rivers. He was a hero and also a man who carried far too many secrets.